Hi everybody, my name is Chef Melissa Parks and I'm so excited to join you again on the Vox Pro events. I think this is a great platform in which we can actually share some recipes in a really educational way. Hopefully fun and, in this case, easy. I think for me, when I think about what is coming up that gets me excited are the holidays. Now granted, everybody's holiday is going to be a little different this year. So keeping that in mind, I thought, why not bring some extra fun to the picture? And I think for me personally, I take opportunities like this, even if the group I'm having is 4 people, it's an opportunity to give people an experience they may not have otherwise had. And it's fun for me, and it should be fun for you. Is that I keep this herb, I keep the cannabis oils, I keep the CBD oils all in my kitchen. So today we're going to be working with 2 of my favorite CBD oils, and I want to go through this first. Is that this is a brand that I have that I love, and this is a lower dose but a more culinary application, meaning that it's a olive oil and you can't taste it's a very clean tasting olive oil. So it's really just a 1-for-1 ratio if I were to switch out olive oil for a CBD infused. Now, therapeutically speaking, I go to these 2 brands, these 2 types of this brand. This is the Bloom brand, and on the website, you will find actually a discount. So if you would like to order what I'm actually using today, you can go online and you can find a discount to these. So I have one with a citrus flavor and one with a neutral flavor. And these are higher dosed, more medicinal use than, let's say, the olive oil. Okay, so now that we got that out of the picture, I'm gonna go through a few recipes. And the first one I'm gonna go through is the sweet potato cracker. Yes, it's gluten-free. I did not mean for that to happen. I like almond flour because it's nutty, and the oats because it's just a sense of nostalgia. And really, in the end, it's highly nutritional. It's going to be low dose, and you don't even have to actually infuse the crackers because we're going to pair it with a hummus. So you can either infuse the crackers or the hummus or both. So let's get started. Okay. First things first, it's a sweet potato cracker. So what I did is I actually just took a sweet potato. This was a gigantic sweet potato. So this is what I have left over from the batch that I made earlier. And I just cooked it, peeled it, mashed it. That's it. Set it aside. And oh gosh, plus I love having this left over. I added in smoothies, I added to my yogurt. This time of year, if you're looking to get more use out of fall vegetables, the fall harvest, I think these are great recipes because you'll have leftovers that you can put towards anything, and you can add that in a curry. So here's the actual dough that I let sit overnight in the refrigerator. You do not have to do this step, but I wanted to show you, this is not a typical cracker texture. This is not something that you're going to need. So what you really want to do is you actually want to incorporate these ingredients using a spoon or a fork just until they come together. And I'm telling you, do not be alarmed by this texture, because the first time I made my recipe, I looked at it and I was just like, this isn't going to work. I promise you it works. Okay, so far we have our dough. And our dough is sitting here. But what actually went into this? I really wanted to make this a recipe that you could go to the store, but also have some of these things in your pantry so you don't have to go out and buy expensive flours or whatever it may be. So I'm gonna run through them and tell you an option you can buy and a way you can make it yourself. So let's start here. This is my brown rice flour. Now, I bought this just because I personally ran out of brown rice. Now, I did, however, make white rice flour. And all I did, this is leftover gelato container I reused, but in here you'll see it's white rice. So take rice that you have in your pantry, grind it down and sift it. So just using like a strainer. And what comes out is rice flour. So don't go out and purchase something if you have rice in your pantry. And for most people, that is a staple. So if you don't need to buy it, don't. Same thing when it comes to oat flour. Now, you can either purchase it or take oats from your pantry, grind them up, sift them using a strainer, and you have oat flour. Simple oats from my pantry. Typically speaking, I tend to make my own unless I'm doing high volume. And then I buy because I like my shorts, my little short steps. So almond flour, same thing. This is sometimes called almond meal or almond flour. And yeah, so almond flour, I purchased it because I use that a lot, but I also made my own. And I like to have different kinds of almond flour, and I like to toast the almonds and let them dry overnight, and then I'll grind them. But I also have just the raw, which is what this is, just the raw. So you can make any of the staples you would buy, and pretty much all from, well, my pantry, and I hope yours. And the only thing that is not necessarily a staple in most pantries are your chia seeds. So the chia seeds, you buy them whole. I ground them down and they look like black pepper when they're ground down. They're actually more bioavailable, so they're nutritionally more beneficial when they're ground down, just like a flax seed or something like that. But I used a spice grinder, coffee grinder. Grind it down. Best investments, coffee grinders, scales, and, well, a blender. I have a Vitamix, but by all means, you don't have to buy that one. All right, so now that we know you can make all of these pantry staples, that to me alleviates a lot of what I try to not do, which is spend a lot of money and a lot of time on ingredients and cooking during any holiday. I think the less stress, the better. I mean, I love my family and all, but you know. All right, so now that we have all of this, one last thing is your rosemary. Now in here, I like to add rosemary this time of year. But I mean, you can put in parsley, you can put, I mean, you don't even have to put in an herb. You can just leave it like that. Do you see what I just did? So that's the way you sort of strip a rosemary of all of its leaves. I'm going to do that again, is where you have, let me get these little side guys out of the way. And so you have a stalk. This woodsy part, you don't want to use. So that's where you're going to run your finger from the top and you want to run it down, and through that you'll gather all of the leaves. You'll strip it so that way you can take these and you want to just chop that down. And I don't like to chop this really fine right here. I'll just maybe go through it once or twice. And this is not my best knife. So it's big, not that, but really this is going into a food processor and it's going to get chopped down further. I just want to get it going. I want to get it started just for ease of mixing and making my life easier. It's faster. All right, so setting this aside, I'm actually going to do this. Bear with me. Okay, little trick. Under any cutting board, I put a little piece of paper towel. That way it's a wet paper towel. The cutting board doesn't slide. Okay, so let's get to rolling out the dough. Again, don't be scared. It's not rolling it out. It's really just pushing it into place. So let me explain. I'm gonna grab my 2 pieces of parchment paper. I like to make mine fairly large, just so I have more room to maneuver. So I'm going to take this first part, take the dough. Again, I say dough loosely. And do this. Set that aside. Now I like to glove up for this. So let me grab some gloves that I have pretty handy here. I'm using a glove. You don't have to do this. You can just get your hands dirty, but I like to push the dough out with my palm. So you want to use your palm and guide the dough to get it started. Remove this guy a bit. Now again, because this has sweet potatoes and herbs and oils, and if you do choose to infuse this, it already has olive oil in the dough. So it's gonna be a loose and wet dough. You're working with vegetables and fresh produce, and that carries liquid with it. So that's why I'm saying don't be alarmed. This is totally normal. All right, now that I've kind of pounded it into place, I'm going to take my second piece of parchment paper. Put that on top. All right, now that we have this here, you can start the rolling out process. But really, what you're trying to do is just use your hand as much as you can, so that way the rolling pin doesn't have to do as much and you're not tugging on the parchment paper. You're really just guiding it. So you can continue to do that and roll that out quite thin. So I have my rolling pin. Now, if you notice, if I do this, it leaves these indentations, and that's not a goal of mine. What I want to actually do is for this thing not to spin. So if you have a rolling pin that's just a long rod, that's what this is for. If you don't, and you just have one of these, totally fine. Grab it like this, so it's not rolling, and you're pushing it. But this way, it's larger, flatter, and doesn't have the indentations your hand does. And you can see it's gonna get a little indentation, totally fine. So you're gonna wanna push this as thin as you can. And for the sake of time, what I'm actually gonna do is show you this part. Now, when this is definitely too thick, but you want the thickness to be like a quarter, an eighth of an inch. So it's just real thin, not too thin. So when you go to pull this off, notice how I'm keeping my hand behind it, and I'm guiding the parchment paper away. I'm not ripping it. I'm guiding this piece by piece by spreading my fingers out and pulling it back. There. Now we can put that in the thank you for coming bowl. Great. Now, here's this my giant pizza cutter. If you don't have one of these, don't panic. Use a big knife. Doesn't matter. But when it comes to cutting the crackers, I like to cut these kind of like one of those like thin crackers you'll see in the grocery store. And it's not too big, it's not too small. It's just right to put a tiny little bit of like a hummus or a dip on top. So I'm going to go through and show you something. Is that when I'm using this, I'm actually tilting the knife towards me just a touch. Because if I were to go straight up and down, the dough it may stick to your knife, and it unfortunately might overlap at that point. But don't worry, all you want to do is do a slight tilt towards you and run your knife through. And then you're going to do the same thing on this side. I like to cut these corners off for chef to try. You should always sample your food before you serve it to guests. And then you can guess about the size of the cracker. Now, this is half of the dough. So each half is going to have anywhere between 45 to 48 crackers. So if you do choose to dose this, remember the dosages, I mentioned this, you'll actually see this information online, but I talk about an ease of dosing. That's why I love these brands. So an ease of dosing is this oil, as you can see, has markings on it. It's very faint from a distance, but when I go in and I want to dose appropriately with the amount of cannabis oil, or in this case, this is straight CBD, this is hemp oil. When I'm working with this hemp oil, I want the exact amount. So I now know that I personally like to get vials that have that marking on them. Please look for that. And don't panic if you find a brand that works best for you. You can go to the pharmacy or the grocery store and you can get a box of plastic vials. And by plastic, I mean they do not have a needle. Don't need the needle. What you want is sanitary. It's just a box. I think this box cost me $5. You can get them online. You can do whatever you want. I just have to be smarter than the package. All right. Now you can see on here is that it is marked, and it's marked by the milliliter. It's the same concept, different dropper. So you'll have to put that in a container that you can then measure it from. But you want to try and be as accurate as you can. Is you want to start low dose and go slow in your consumption, but also accuracy makes a big difference. You also don't want to add too much oil to your cracker recipe. So, all right, you're going to cut these down, and then you're going to take this entire piece of parchment paper and transfer this to your baking pan. So right here, you'll see, I am going to then take this dough and bake it right on parchment. The reason I like parchment, it comes up easier. It releases easier, there's no stickage, and for me, it bakes evenly. Now here's something that I want to point out to you. If you do choose to medicate your crackers, you're gonna bake them at the temperature and time suggested on the recipe online. Now for me, I personally choose to not medicate this dough. My reason for that is I like my crackers like super crisp, and these crackers get crispy, just not the way that I like it. So let me show you the crackers that I have finished. So by the magic of television, we have these finished crackers. Now notice, I made my life a lot easier. Again, holidays, make your life as easy as possible. Now, here, you'll notice there are two different colors of the cracker. This is darker, this is lighter. This one, still crisp. This one, very crisp and nutty. These are my favorite. So when you cook them for a longer period of time, you then run the risk of burning off or degrading the oil you added in there. So CBD, it is essentially its boiling point, or the point at which you should worry about losing some of the concentration you want in your crackers, is 320 to 360. But the dough went into a 350-degree oven at a cold temperature. So as it bakes, it's never going to reach that temperature with this color. But with this color, I probably lost about a third of the percentage I added in. So I don't want to lose that. This is my preference. So I put my favorites with a store-bought cracker, and then I put out a dip. The dip that we're going to move on to next is the medicated hummus. I medicate my hummus because I know I'm not going to do the crackers. You can do both. You can do one or the other. I personally I eat, sleep, and breathe hummus. I eat it every day, all day. So I like to have a medicated and unmedicated version on hand at all times. So that's it for the crackers. And yeah, like I said, this is half store-bought, half the part that I made. Make your life easier. You do not have to make every cracker on your platter. You don't have to make every dessert and do all these things. You can buy purchased items to help you out for ease, but you don't have to. It's cost efficient. It's super tasty. These things are, I mean, I pop these things like they're candy. I have them all around my house. I like to have CBD infused options around my house because I eat or take the oil 3 times throughout the day to help me with my ailments. And I like to microdose throughout the day. So these little crackers are a nice little treat, holiday or no holiday. I'm gonna sit here, enjoy this, and then we're gonna move right on to the hummus recipe, which I hope you guys enjoy too. I'll see you real soon.